Welcome back to Boilers in the Stands. I'm your host, Joe Jackson. Alongside me, as always, is my co-host, Craig Bowers. Purdue, after winning the Rady's Children Invitational, goes on the road to open up Big Ten play at the Penn State Nittany Lions, a team that is 7-1, off to a pretty good start this season. This, I think, going to be a tougher matchup than maybe people would have thought coming into the year, but we will dive into all of that, everything that you need to know for this game that is happening on Thursday, December 5th. Craig, I'll throw it to you. How's it going? And kind of just your initial thoughts on Penn State.
Yeah, it's going well. Made it back from San Diego. The travel home on Saturday, the whole flight situation was quite interesting. There were quite a few Purdue fans on our flight. I know some of them stuck it out, and I think they were in the airport for 12 hours before they got on that plane. We finally gave up and just came home on a different airline. But it was a great time out there. Really enjoyed it. Appreciative of everybody who watches the show and supports the show that allows for me be able to go and do things like that and do the live coverage out there. But I'm really looking forward to this Penn State matchup. Like you said, I think this is a matchup that presents some, I guess, interesting scenarios, interesting issues just based on the way Penn State wants to play. And just jumping into Penn State, right? A team that is 7-1. Their best win is actually against Purdue Fort Wayne, who is higher on Ken Palm than Virginia Tech is. They have the one loss against Clemson, who's 25th in Ken Palm, so that's not a big loss for them in that way. This is a Penn State team that I think a lot of media were sleeping on coming into the year. They ranked them 17th in the preseason poll. I know you and I were both higher on Penn State significantly than what most of the media was. 37th overall in Ken Palm. They come out 33 in the very first net that's there. And obviously a team that we know, if you've ever watched, he comes from that VCU coaching train, Mike Rhodes, in his second year there. If you've ever watched any of that style of playing, you watched Penn State last year, a team that wants to create chaos. He calls it 40 minutes of zigzag defense, but they want to create deflections. They want to swipe down on ball. They want to attack the ball whenever they can, apply a ton of perimeter pressure. They will press some, a lot of times just to slow you down. But if they see an advantage there, they'll try to take advantage of it and get that steal in the backcourt too. I think that specifically for me is what immediately jumps out. And this is the second year for Mike Rhodes. Remember last year, those were basically all transfers. He had Ace Baldwin Jr., he had Kern that he brought with him from VCU, but everybody else had to learn that defensive style. And to me, this team looks like they create the chaos that he was getting created at VCU with a bunch of guys who'd been in that system for a while.
Yeah, I'm with you there. They're a team that, even like last year, they want to force turnovers. They want to create havoc. Ace Baldwin is a dude that, maybe it's Kobe. It might be Kobe Johnson might have quicker hands, but Ace Baldwin has for sure top two quickest hands in the entire conference. I've seen it I've watched quite a few of their games already. There's so many times that it looks like it honestly looks like he just has the thought of oh, I'm gonna get a steal right now, and then he just goes and does it. He just rips a dude and is able to do that. But I think the thing that's improved defensively for them is they have a true rim protector now with Yannick and Niederhauser. They did not have that element last year. They're also shooting the ball really, really well from three, and that's where this is a tough spot for Purdue to open up Big Ten play. I really think it is, of going on the road against a team that is, one, shooting the ball well, two, has an elite point guard, and three, forces a lot of turnovers. We can dive into some of the specific players in a sec, but those three things are going to, or I guess the two things specifically with 3-point shooting for Penn State and how many Purdue turnovers. If I was to summarize it in two things, it would probably be those two things.
Yeah. And, as we've done some of these previews, and we're going to get to Maryland, we're going to get to Texas A&M, we're going to get to Auburn. Purdue's going to be really excited when they face a team that's not in the top 12 or 13 in steal percentage, turnover percentage, that's really high pressure perimeter defense. And when they turn the calendar into the Big Ten season in January, they're going to face some teams that don't pressure the ball nearly as well as what some of the teams they face in the non-conference. But Penn State, again, ranks 10th in steal percentage, ranks 14th in turnover percentage. Immediately jump out, slap you in the face, key to the game, take care of the ball. And we've said it feels like on multiple of these games going in, but it just feels like we're seeing some of these teams early on. From a defensive standpoint in the half court, what is Penn State going to do, like stylistically, especially with TKR when we pitch it in the post?
Yeah, I think if it's Yannick, they're gonna stay single coverage probably no matter what. We're gonna circle back to the TKR at the 5 because that's gonna be one of the key points I think for this game too. But for post ups, like they're gonna stay single coverage. They'll trust Yannick Niederhauser. He's a legit 7-footer that moves well, is big. Their backup big is Kashienze. He's only 6'8", 225. So when he's in, it feels like Purdue needs to probably attack him a bit more with TKR. But in the half court, right, beyond just pressing and all that, they're still wanting to force steals. They are going to be pretty aggressive with their ball screen coverage. Probably a lot of hedges. Yannick will mix in some drop coverage, but a lot of hedges, want to force the ball handler out. And that's what they want to do. They are a very good team at rotating back, where they'll put 2 on the ball, and then what that does is it puts 4 on 3 the other way. But Penn State's really good at just kind of rotating out of it and being able to still fly back and get those good looks. Now, one thing that does open up is 3-point shooting. It's not like Nebraska style where you bomb away from 3, but that's probably been their biggest flaw defensively is they haven't been elite defending the 3-point line. And some of that is just that being in rotation. So with that, like Brain Smith has to take care of the ball in more ways than one. He has to bring the ball across half court, obviously. And then from there, he has to get Purdue into their stuff. They have to make smart post-entry passes and things like that, and just not allow this team to get deflections, because that's what they want to do. They want to get deflections. They have, 5 guys with a steal percentage over 3%, which for reference, it puts all of those guys nationally ranked. And for Purdue, there is 1 guy over 3%, and that's Braden Smith at 3.2. This is a team that wants to force deflections.
Yeah. I watched most of the Virginia Tech game, and I watched most of the Clemson game. And I think it's interesting to me that you bring that up about the 3-point shooting and just being able to get a 3-point shot, because I thought there was 2 things that really jumped out to me that I thought Purdue could maybe do offensively to this Penn State defense. And one of which is they gravitate to the ball so much, and their eyes always on the ball, and they want to slap down on the ball. You'll see 2 or 3 guys sometimes, they not true double, but they'll come down, like if the big puts the ball on the floor, to me, that skip pass is open a lot of times. Or if you reverse ball quick and move ball, both of those teams got a decent amount of wide open 3-point looks. Virginia Tech missed a lot of them. Clemson hit some of them. So I do think there's a chance for that to be there for sure. The other thing for me is, this hasn't necessarily been all season long, but Niederhauser got in foul trouble in both of those games, at least early. I didn't see if he stayed in foul trouble in the Clemson game, but he's not necessarily the greatest at defending the post without fouling yet. And in both of those games, the commentators were talking, because I think he only played 8 minutes in the first half against Virginia Tech because he got in foul trouble. And a couple of different times, the announcer said the coach, Mike Rhodes, had been working with him about just walling up and not fouling. So I do think there's opportunity. I'll be real interested to see if Painter immediately just goes to TKR and tries to get him on the bench.
I would like to see it, just because I think it would be important, and especially out of post-ups is probably where the fouls are coming. He's averaging 3.4 fouls per 40 minutes. Like, for a big his size, it's not the worst. It's down from 5.2 last year. But yeah, that Virginia Tech game, he had 5, and Clemson, he only ended up with 1, but I thought he picked it up fairly early just because of the post-up. Yeah. They're a different team without him. They really are to me.
Yeah, I just remember he went. I basically only watched the first half of that Clemson game, and I know he went to the bench pretty quick because he picked up that first foul real early. And like I said, I didn't finish through the whole game, but I do think there's an opportunity for TKR to get him into some foul trouble there. From an offensive standpoint, what should we expect to see out of this Penn State team?
They're going to run pick and roll. Like, that's what they do. That is their offense. They run pick and roll. Last year they ran more pick and roll than I think everybody in the entire country. If not, they were like top 3 this year. Again, they're like top 5 already in pick and roll rates. And they are also very, very good at it. Ace Baldwin, he's going to get downhill. He's going to facilitate for others. He's going to score. He's going to get to the rim. He's going to get to the foul line. Ace Baldwin's really, really good. Niederhauser now gives him a legitimate lob threat on that role. And then you have guys like Freddie Dillon, who's kind of coming into his role isn't super efficient shooter. But he's somebody that can kind of be that secondary ball handler. Nick Kern is an interesting guy of like, he'll run pick and roll at 6'6". He is not a shooter at all. He is, in my eyes, he's the second most athletic player in the Big Ten behind Cohen Carr. Like some of the dunks that he does, and it's different than Cohen Carr, where Carr's just like crazy explosive and that. Kern's just like wiry, and it's just like how did you get up that high, and how did you get up that quick? And that's where he's at. So they have, it isn't just Ace Baldwin, although he'll have obviously a lot of the percentage of possessions. There are a lot of guys that can also create and get downhill. And then there's also shooters this year. They're shooting the ball well, so now that opens up kickouts. But yeah, it is a lot of pick and roll where Baldwin's either going to shoot, pass to the roller, or pass to somebody on the wing where either they catch and shoot or they drive. And it's simple offense, but they've been really, really good at it this year.
And that plays to both of their big man strengths, right? Because neither of those guys necessarily are true back to the basket post up guys a ton. They're gonna more catch it on the roll, headed towards the rim, and be more athletic in terms of a lob threat, especially with Niederhauser from that standpoint. So you want to get into some of the specific players a little bit more now, or you have any other big kind of key things to look at from this Penn State team?
We can get into some of the players, and then yeah, I'll circle back on like our specific keys to the game.
Okay, perfect. So Ace Baldwin, obviously, big defensive player of the year last year, third team All Big Ten last year, picked to be preseason All Big Ten this year. Leads Penn State in scoring with 14.9 points, 8.4 assists per game. He's a dude. He shoots 20% of Penn State's shots, has a 24% usage rate, shooting 38% from three, 90% from free throw. Maybe the only flaw you could pick on is he's 6 foot. Like, I guess if he's got to defend a 6'5" guard, or if you put some length on him, I don't know. He's just way, way good.
Yeah, he's like the Braden. I mean, he is the Braden Smith for Purdue or for Penn State of just like, yes, there maybe are little things you can nitpick at and things like that, but at the end of the day, he's really good. He's going to handle the ball a ton. He makes really, really good decisions for the most part. I do think he can get sped up just a little bit, and you can see some higher turnover games, but it's right. Like he's had a 6 turnover game. He's had 2 5s, and the 2 5 turnover games, he also had 11 assists. So it's like, he still is making plays with that. Yeah, I mean, he's so slithery and able to get downhill. Like it's hard to really defend, and he's shooting the ball well from 3 this year. It's not like he's been a poor shooter. He's been a pretty good shooter throughout his career, but low sample size. He's been shooting it very well this year, and when that's falling, he just has the ability to fully take over games.
And he's a hooper, what I would call a hooper. Like he makes, he takes and makes really difficult mid-range shots at times. He's really crafty about getting into some of those mid-range and drawing fouls, kind of similar to how Braden can be in terms of craftiness of getting that foul at times. But yeah, way, way good. If we move to kind of more of the shooting guard position, I guess, so far it's been DeLeon starting, 6'5" shooting guard who comes from Tennessee. Was kind of stuck behind Ziegler and one of the better offensive players in the country last year in Dalton Connect. So just never really saw the floor, and then moved over to Penn State and has started here. Like you said, not a 3-point shooter, only 25% on the year, but he's long and he's athletic for where his position is.
Yeah, he's like, he kind of like, he's Ace Baldwin light if Ace Baldwin was 6'5", where like DeLeon's not as good as Ace Baldwin. Don't get me wrong there, but like this kind of athletic guard, he can handle the ball some, gets a lot of deflections. You just kind of can do. I think he pairs well with Baldwin. It would be better if he could shoot a little bit, but I think he was a high 4-star coming into Tennessee, and then he redshirted and then didn't play a lot last year. So like he's still, I feel like, almost coming into his own. But another guy that like, he's going to drive, he's going to get deflections, and that feels like the big thing with him.
Yeah. And then in terms of other wings on this team, you've got Zach Hicks and you've got Nick Kern. And the interesting thing to me is almost like kind of Painter does it with Purdue sometimes. Nick Kern comes off the bench, but actually plays more minutes than 2 other starters on this team. And I'm going to talk about him first a little bit. You already have to a degree, but a guy who's been with Rhodes at VCU before he came over here. Really, really athletic. I just watching them on film and watching them last year. Like I love the way he plays, man. He is so athletic. He can get so many deflections, second on the entire team in terms of steals. He can drive the ball well at his size still. I think he's second. Yeah, he's second on this team in assists with 2.5. Really, the only thing he doesn't do well is shoot threes. Outside of that, I think he does everything in an extremely high level and can be a real disruptor with his length.
He is like, if you have a player that doesn't shoot, that's a wing, you want him to be Nick Kern. Like he just, it doesn't, for the most part, it doesn't matter that he can't shoot. He still just finds his way downhill. He's going to cut. He'll attack the glass a little bit. He can facilitate for others, like you said. And then obviously he's really, really disrupt. Like if Ace Baldwin didn't exist, Nick Kern would probably have a better case for like Big Ten Defensive Player of the Year, just with how active, and he might even have that this year, just with how active he is. Yeah, you live with him shooting threes. If he knocks one down, whatever, you kind of just tip your cap and move on. But yeah, just so good at getting downhill.
And then on the other side of that, who starts in front of him kind of at that 3 spot is Zach Hicks at 6'7", 13.4 points a game. He facilitates relatively well to size 2, 2.3 assists, but elite shooter this year. 50% on the year from 3. Over 70% of his shots come from 3. Doesn't necessarily get downhill as much as a couple of other guys that we're talking about on here. I guess just what are your thoughts on Hicks in general?
Zach Hicks has been really, really good this year. He's shooting the ball very well. I think he's getting a little bit cleaner looks because that was the scout on him even last year. It's just like this stretch 4 that can shoot the ball really well. Most of his twos are going to come off of cuts, things like that. He's not super high usage like he can facilitate, but it's more of a, hey, my shot isn't open. Let me kind of move the ball here a bit. He is the guy that like Purdue cannot afford to leave open in any capacity. And I'm curious what they do to guard really that starting lineup. Cause I'll just jump in with Puff Johnson here. The other forward that starts 6'8", 210. Johnson's shooting the ball really well this year. He's more of a like slashing defender. Not a ton of on ball usage, but catch and shoot, cut, maybe 1 or 2 dribble drives. Purdue's gonna have to figure out whether they want to put I assume Heidi on Johnson and like Lawyer on Hicks to start would be my guess, but I'm not like super confident in that.
And so you're assuming Colvin on Baldwin or Braden on Baldwin?
Probably Colvin, right? And then you put Braden on Freddie Dillon.
I don't know. I think
Unless
this
you
is one
put
of those
Lawyer on
games.
Dillon and Smith on Baldwin and Colvin on Hicks, I guess.
That's kind of where I feel like it's gonna go. Just with the size and length at both of those at the 2 and the 3. I don't know. I think we're gonna see an Ace Smith matchup.
We'll see. Yeah, we might, and they might go to it. If I was to guess, I would say Colvin on Baldwin, but I'm not. Like I said, I'm not super confident.
If we still had the Jakari starting lineup, I would assume then Jakari on Baldwin.
Yeah,
down the line, but I just laterally, like Colvin can still get caught against a guy that's got a lot of juice and kind of got some of that shimmy to his game, and I don't know.
We'll see.
I think it's a Smith matchup. We'll see.
The other 2 guys, I mean, that's kind of the wing group, right? Nick Kern, Zach Hicks,
Right.
Puff Johnson. There's a couple guys like DeMarco Dunn, Dominic Stewart, Javin Carter. They'll come in and play spot minutes, but they're not super part of the rotation. I think the other 2 guys to mention, Yannick Conan Niederhauser and Kashienze. I've already talked about Niederhauser. 7 foot. He has one of the highest block rates in the entire country. He's going to finish everything at the rim. He draws a ton of fouls. He isn't a great free throw shooter. Somebody that we talked about, hey, maybe Purdue can try to get in foul trouble. He just, with this Penn State defense so predicated on gambling and looking for steals and looking for deflections, he gives them that presence down low of like, hey, you can gamble because I'll be at the rim ready for everybody. And Penn State just didn't have that last year, and that's really, really important to me. And then he's also an elite lob threat. Of Purdue's going to have to figure out something. Kashienze, he's 6'8", not a shooter at all, not as athletic. He'll still finish well around the rim, but it's definitely a different look when he's into me. And that's going to be. I'm very curious to see what Purdue does just with TKR on him, on Niederhauser specifically.
So, I mean, just with that matchup in general, do you see this as a game where Caleb may have to play more minutes, just from a defensive perspective?
I think at times, yes, because I think the other thing is you do risk this is a game where you risk TKR getting in foul trouble at the 5 of just what Niederhauser is 20th in the country in fouls drawn per 40 minutes. He is physical. He moves really well. It'll be interesting because the other thing is like these past 2 games, right? Purdue very, very good with TKR at the 5. The first 2, especially with Bama and some of their bigs, it struggled, and so I'm curious to see was that just, hey, this is like one of our first times running this lineup and that's why it struggled, or was it, hey, this lineup just kind of struggles against bigs. Like NC State and Ole Miss had some athleticism and some big dudes, but it wasn't like TKR was never at like a size disadvantage in my head, whereas he will be in this one. But on the other end, can Niederhauser like keep up when TKR faces up? I don't know.
Yeah, I obviously I didn't watch. I don't know how many Penn State games you've watched this year. I just watched the 2 that they played against other power conference teams, and I
sorry. No, you go.
Oh, I was just gonna say I just really have a feeling that TKR is gonna put him into foul trouble. Like, I pretty strongly believe, just in terms of his post moves, he's gonna be able to get him to bite and draw some fouls on him early. At least that's my hope.
Yeah, that's fair too. So that was kind of one of my key points as we wrap into that, is like, what does this TKR at the 5 lineup look like? Can they make him pay? Can you get Niederhauser in foul trouble? Can they rebound, right? Penn State's not like elite rebounding, but Niederhauser's a force down low. They have other dudes that can go and do it. This is, in terms of size, this is the first matchup since the Marquette game, or the Bama game, really, I guess, where it's like, it feels like TKR will be at a size disadvantage. We'll also see that against Maryland. Maybe not TKR as much, but where Heidi's going to have to guard a big. It's going to be a good test this week of, will this lineup hold up enough defensively that like the offense flourishing is absolutely worth it? And that's going to be my first key, I guess, to the game.
Yeah. I mean, we've already talked about what I guess my primary key would be. Like, I think 3 different times at some point through here is just have to take care of the ball, have to maintain composure against this pressure. I'm going to be really interested to see. It wouldn't surprise me at all if Jakari gets quite a few minutes and gets a heavy load in this game just for the need of a secondary ball handler. I think a lot of that kind of just predicates on what's happening defensively with Miles in the game, and then also does Miles get going offensively really quickly. But I think if you see Penn State come out and force 4 or 5 turnovers in that first 6 or 7, or let's hopefully not 6 or 7 minutes, but if they come out and force 3 or 4 turnovers pretty quickly, I could see Painter going to the bench pretty fast to grab Jakari and pull into this game.
Yeah, I think that is fair. We've talked about, right, the other key rebounding, turnovers are just always going to be key points. Can Braden Smith be really effective still? Like, he still has to be. I'm not like too concerned that he gets completely shut down or anything, but can he get going alongside TKR? And then Purdue knocking down some open threes, like that kind of feels like the recipe that they're going to have basically for every game, but especially this one.
100%. Do you think this is a heavy dose Braden Smith TKR pick and roll game, or do you think this is more running sets?
I would say they start in sets.
Go ahead.
But then Penn State will switch a lot, and that could shut the sets down, and then they default to pick and roll. It'll eventually go to pick and roll probably. It puts a lot of pressure on Braden Smith. Yeah, he has to be good against the hedge. I'm not too concerned, but like, this is a team closer to Marquette's hedge than what anything else they've seen.
Yeah. I don't remember exactly which of the two games it was, but I did see him run some of that 2-man pick and roll action on a, off to the side and hurt Penn State a few times with that.
Yeah.
So I'm interested if we see more of that as well. I know you got to wrap up, right? So we should probably go ahead and call it.
Yeah. Unless if you got anything else big, then otherwise we're good.
I'm good. I'm excited. I'm looking forward to seeing how Purdue handles the matchup.
Yep, should be a fun matchup. 6:30 p.m. Eastern time on FS1. That is Thursday, December 5th. We will be live basically right after the final buzzer, 8:30 ish Eastern time, give or take a little bit, obviously depending on the time of the game. Should be a good one. Should, in my head, be a pretty close one, but we will be live after the game, recapping everything that you need from it. So appreciate everybody tuning in. Make sure you like, subscribe. If you turn on bell notifications, you'll know exactly when we do go live. Appreciate everybody tuning in, and we will catch you then Thursday after the